Hi, Sarah.
All right.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you doing, Miss Brenda?
I am well. How about you?
Doing fantastic. Just getting the last few things set up and waiting on our audience.
Excellent.
And bear with me just a moment. I'll leave you with your lovely face while I fix a few things. Good evening. I see we're starting to get some folks trickling in. Hope everybody's having a good afternoon or evening, depending on which coast you're on. My name's Sarah Hoover. I'm here with HALOHOME hosting Miss Brenda Garung from the Alzheimer's Association. You want to say hi, Miss Brenda?
Oh, I apologize. Hello, everybody. And Sarah, I don't see the video, um, and I might be too early.
Uh, the live stream did propagate a different link, so if you're not seeing it on YouTube, there's an adjacent link you might have to click under the first video.
I don't see it. What I'm seeing is this video is unavailable.
Try going to the channel. You'll see it underneath the HALOHOME channel. But we are live, so we are good to go.
Sarah, I apologize. I don't see it. If you can just help me so I'm on the right place, can you send me a link?
Sure thing. Give me just one moment.
Thank you. I do think I see it now, Sarah.
All right. Well, I believe we are good to go. So everyone, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Miss Brenda take over with the first part of today's lessons on creating an empowered caregiver. And once she's done, I have a couple slides that I'll go through everyone with on reducing emotional outbursts. And then we'll end up with the AMA. So I'll be collecting any type of questions in chat throughout the live stream, and we will put those up top and answer those at the end. Ms. Brenda, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. And hello, everyone. My name is Brenda Garone. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a longtime volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm a credentialed dementia specialist, and tonight we will talk through understanding and responding to dementia-related behavioral expressions. This is one of my favorite workshops to facilitate because the dementia journey is hard, right? And behavioral expressions can be surprising. They can be something that we're not sure what they mean or how to interact with our person or how to lessen them or when what triggers them. And so tonight we will talk through a workshop from the association, the Alzheimer's Association. We'll talk through some common triggers for behavioral expressions. We'll talk through a process for assessing and identifying challenging behavioral expressions, and I think that will be helpful to you all. I have facilitated this workshop many times, many locations, and there's a 4-part assessment tool that is super simple, but also accessible to us in the moment when something has gone awry and we're uncertain what to do. And then if we have a little bit of time, we'll share maybe a couple strategies around common behavioral expressions as well. So behavioral expressions, when I use that term, it could be a number of things going on for your person. It may be that they are not recognizing you. It may be maybe they live with you or you live with them and they say, oh, this isn't where I live. I live somewhere else, or this isn't my home. Or they may say, I got to get out of here. I got to get to work. There could be a number of ways that behavioral expressions show up. They could show up as quote unquote aggression. They could be somebody pacing or looking for something or someone. But what I want to emphasize for you first is that behavioral expressions are simply a reaction to how your person perceives their environment and you and where they are. And so behavioral expressions are not your person being difficult or not trying hard enough or being aggressive. They are simply reacting to how they perceive this time and space and individuals around them. So that's one of the first most important things we can share. As I reference the slides, I want to take just a moment to share 3 things with you. Number one, at the close of this, you will have sorry about that. You will have a form that you can fill out to get handouts from the slides and other resources from the Alzheimer's Association. There is on the screen you see to the left of myself, you see an 800 number. I want to emphasize 2 resources to you throughout this live. One is that the Alzheimer's Association persons a 24-hour helpline. So you can call anytime, day or night, and there will be somebody to help you. I'm going to verbalize that number to you. It's on the screen. And if somebody can put it in the chat, that's amazing. It's 1-800-272-3900. Now, there's multiple language services. There's TTY service. This is a great resource for you so that one day when you've just had it up to here and you're uncertain what to do, another day if you say, so that one day like when you've just had it up to here and you're uncertain, or maybe another day you say, another day if you say, so that one day when you've just had it up to here and you're uncertain, or maybe another day you say, another day if you say, so that one day when you just had it up to here and you're uncertain, or maybe another day you say, another day if you say, so the Alzheimer's was had a previous another day the Alzheimer's was had a previous another day the Alzheimer's had a previous another day the Alzheimer's had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a previous before we put another day the Alzheimer's one thing that had a the day, and particularly if they are more grounded at an earlier time in their life, you may find that they don't recognize you or they think of you as younger as well. And so you may be helping them with the restroom and they're like, who is this person helping? I don't recognize, you're not my child. My child is young, or I don't have kids, or my spouse is a young person. You're an old person. And that may be alarming to your person. The next two, unfamiliar surroundings, which kind of similar to what I talked about when if your person is more grounded at an earlier time in their life. And this can be fluid. They may consistently see themselves at that earlier time in their life, or it may kind of ebb and flow. The last couple items, unfamiliar surroundings and complicated tasks. Complicated tasks, for many of the dementias, the ability to do a complicated, multiple stepped process is often impacted. The ability to do something in the correct sequence is often impacted. To make simple but critical mistakes. So maybe your person has always baked and now they're mixing up the flour and the sugar or the sugar and the salt or something. Like you can see if you sort of put on your dementia goggles, you say, oh, I could see where that mistake would happen. But it does impact your person. So complicated tasks may be tasks that are simpler than you would expect. I should say that differently. Complicated tasks for your person may actually be simpler. And so that may be some of what is triggering a behavioral expression. I'll give one more example and then we'll pivot. I often hear from families of choice, professionals, that an individual who is on a dementia journey, maybe in the early to mid stage, might start to develop difficulty with technology. So with the motion camera on their front door, with their cell phone, with the remote for the TV, with the new stove that is like talks to you, right? We may start to see that our person has difficulty with technology that is not so recognizable to them. I'm going to pause for just a sec. I've not been watching the chat because it's too many things, too confusing for me. I'm doing my best though. um, Many of my examples so far, I've described someone who is in the mid to late stage of the dementia journey, but I don't want to leave out individuals who are at the early stage or individuals who are on a dementia journey and maybe on this live tonight. I want to acknowledge and I want to speak to you if you are on a journey yourself, that it's not over. Dementia is a progressive, the various dementias are progressive diseases. They affect a whole lot of our abilities in the long run, but there are abilities that are maintained, and some abilities that are often maintained late into the dementia journey are the ability maybe not to recognize who this person is, but I know I like them or I know I feel comfortable with them. The ability to read aloud, to read a traditional clock is often maintained late into the dementia journey. The muscle memory is often maintained later into the dementia journey. The ability to connect through music. Music is processed in a different part of the brain than spoken language. And so sometimes we think, oh, my person is having difficulty verbally communicating. They won't be able to interact with music either, but that's not the case. Music is often maintained late. So there are all sorts of things that we can continue to connect together. And if you yourself are on a dementia journey tonight, I want you to know you are not broken. It is not over. You have a lot to contribute still, no matter where you're at in your journey. And the onus is on us, myself, caregivers, care partners, professionals. The onus is on us to adjust to connect with you. So I want you to know you are seen. Okay, let's keep going. So I mentioned that we would talk through this 4-part assessment tool. And I promise you, as I describe it, you will think, yeah, 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 Brenda, I got it. I get it. I get it. But when we actually go to apply it, there are a couple things that are hard about it. One thing that's hard, and one thing that, in my experience, individuals skip all the time, but all are helpful, both in the moment as well as proactively, as well as afterwards. So, step one, detect and connect. This is where, in the moment, we don't try to solve. What we are is we're curious. We try to be a little detective. We say to ourselves, huh, I wonder what might be going on here. We try to understand what is the setting, what might be the trigger. If we might have done something else around our person might have triggered them. But step one is super important. It is probably the hardest of them for us. It's not hard, but it's hard for us, to just slow down and look around, pay attention, be curious. The second step is address physical needs. And we'll talk about that. That's related to pain management, or needing to use the restroom, or discomfort, or needing to get up from the chair because they've been stuck there all day and just kind of, you know. Um, the third one is then to address emotional needs. And I think so often in the dementia journey, we're focused on, the physicality of our person, but the emotion is big in this journey, right? And so we need to be able to interact with our person with empathy, with connection, with respect, with value, to lift them up and to understand where they're coming from. Some of you right now are probably rolling your eyes like, impossible, right? But we will talk through some ways to do that. And then number four, we just take 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute and a half, whatever amount of time we have afterwards, and we say, whew, how did that go? We take a moment to just regroup and reflect. How did it go? Did it work better this time? Did it work worse this time? What did I do differently? What did I try new this time? Just to try to figure out, because many of these behavioral expressions are things that will happen consistently or over again. And so we have the opportunity in that to try to tweak our process and our reaction and our proactive approach. Okay, so number one, detect and connect. This is the one that I said is the hardest. This is where my person is upset and I don't just try to solve it. I try to, as long as my person is safe, as long as I am safe, I just sort of emotionally step back and ask myself, what might be going on here? And I sort of replay in my head what happened right before the behavioral expression. What is the environment like? Is it noisy? Is it hot? Has it been kind of chaotic? You know, did we have a party and there's like all these people and kids and dogs and the siren went off, you know, down the street? Like, what is going on right before? I take just a moment, as long as I am safe and my person is safe, and ask myself that, and just try to be kind of big eyes and like, huh, I wonder what might be going on. If any of you have ever done, one of those immersive, like empathy, dementia experiences, in my work, we use the VDT, but people have used, Dementia 24/7 and Dementia Live, is also Rendeavor, is all sorts of things where you sort of put on some stuff and have a sense of what dementia might be like. If you have done that, go back to that experience and say, okay, what else might be going on here? And some things you're looking at, I've talked a lot about the environment, I've talked a lot about visual perception. One thing I did not talk about that comes up often is other people around your person, maybe that's you, maybe it's not, how they approached your person. So, approach is such a foundational skill for caregivers, care partners, is such a foundational skill to learn. Some of it is related with visual perception, some of it is related with like speed of processing and speed of connection. You know, does my person even realize I'm in their space trying to talk with them before I'm suddenly in their space? So Teepa Snow has some really great tools around how we physically approach our person. And good best practice is to get their attention sort of some feet out, maybe about 6 feet out, before you physically come into their space. You connect before you're in that space. And when you come into that space, you're not in a rush and you don't take up all the visual field that they have, but you go slow and you connect intentionally, communicating slowly, clearly, giving pause and time for your person to process. I'm so hot right now. Okay. So detect and connect. This is where we, as long as our person is safe, as long as we are safe, we sort of step out and look around and try to figure out. So first step is look around to what happened right before the behavioral expression. Second step is I think about the preceding day. You know, if it's an afternoon, how did this morning go? How did my person sleep better or worse last night? Have they been feeling poorly? Did we do a whole lot of stuff today? And now they're like overstimulated and sharp, right? So who, what, when, where, how, those are the good questions to ask. Second step is address physical needs. So this is, we talked about pain management. And asking our being observant and then asking our person if they're unable to verbalize, or if they verbalize and say everything hurts, or I don't know, or it's just everywhere, or they're holding their leg and they say it's my arm. Like, we have to be detectives. Other things around physical needs, hydration. Has your person had sufficient water or hydration? It is so easy for our person to become dehydrated, and that can exacerbate dementia-related behavioral expressions. It can cause our person to look more confused, to be more sharp in their emotions, more quick to react. So we want to also tackle hunger. We want to tackle the restroom. Like, what physically could be going on that is causing my person to react? Right now, if I'm uncomfortable because I need to use the restroom, I know to, like, oh, excuse myself and go handle it. But your person may just be uncomfortable and not realize why that is and not be able to connect. And so just imagine for a moment how that feels if you are uncomfortable from being constipated or needing the restroom or being hungry and hangry, right? Some of us are hangry sometimes, or thirsty or dehydrated. Like, at least we recognize that is happening. But imagine you have that feeling and you don't recognize it and you're just like stuck in that feeling. Then the third step is emotional needs. And there's a few things to share here. One, I want to acknowledge for family of choice caregivers in particular, there may be some baggage with your person, right? There may be some stuff that is in your past together that makes it hard to caregive today. I want to acknowledge that. That is a part of this journey for some of us. And so acknowledging the emotional needs and addressing the emotional needs, that's as much for ourselves as for our person. Responding to the emotional needs is stepping out of myself. So taking a moment, as long as my person is safe and I am safe, taking a moment to sort of have to grieve internally or to recognize my own baggage or my own feelings or my own trauma or my own whatever, exhaustion, um, irritation, etc. I recognize that. I set that aside in order to address my person. I will come back to that later about myself. And now I want to look at them with empathy. If anybody has seen the Brene Brown video, Sympathy versus Empathy, so good, so applicable in our space. So to respond with empathy is to not get caught up in the baggage of our relationship or the day or my own frustrations, but to say, oh my gosh, my person doesn't recognize this as their home and they are just upset and worried. They're worried about the kids, but I'm the kids, right? Um, and just to have a moment of empathy of how must that feel and then respond out of that feeling. So my favorite method for this is Naomi Feil's validation method. There are thousands of other ways you can do it, but that is the one that I practice with my team, with families of choice. I practice it myself. Um, and that is where we respond with empathy. We don't try to solve, we don't lie to our person. We just respond and try to draw out what it is they're seeking. If your person is in their 80s and they're saying, "Have you seen my mother?" You don't say, "Oh my gosh, she's dead." You don't say, "Well, that's ridiculous. I told you." You say, "Your mom, you're looking for your mom? Tell me about her." Or, "What do you want from her? What's your favorite part about her?" You lean into it because the emotion is real for your person, even if the words are mixed up, or even if it is not the reality that you live in, the emotion is real, and we need to acknowledge that. There's often saying among dementia caregivers or specialists, etc., um, that, like, do you want to be right or do you want to be connected? That's not the right phrase, but you know what I mean. And so staying focused on responding with empathy and compassion, and I know that is hard, and that is why it is important for caregivers, care partners, families of choice, professionals to take care of your own self as well. So self care is a part of this. It's not in the deck, but we got to do it. Last step, often families of choice professionals skip, and that is to just take a few seconds and regroup. If it is, I always have such a hard time taking my person, getting them into the car and to the doctor's office on time. If that's like a recurring thing that we address, now I'm going to take a moment and say, okay, how did this go? This time actually went better because I made sure that I went slower. I didn't try to do too many things. I played his favorite music. Like, I think about what I did differently, what worked well, what did not work well, what I should try again, what did I forget to try. And we're also looking at the trends. Trends are big in behavioral expressions. I don't talk about them so much on the slides, but if it is something that is consistently happening, then we got to take that apart. We ask ourselves, okay, does this always happen? Does my person always sundown, and are they always suspicious and paranoid? Or are there some days they don't? If I close the blinds early, if I make sure all the lights are on, does that help? Is it worse in the winter? Is it worse when I have the news on? I'm just curious and looking for trends that work and that trigger. Okay. Before we go to the AMA, I'll share one example. And there's this isn't the one I wanted. Okay, well, we'll just leave the slides up. In the longer version of this workshop, which you can view on the Alzheimer's Association site, again, that's alz.org, or you could attend a live webinar or a live in-person if you prefer in your local area, and you can get those that schedule either at the 800 number, 800-272-3900, or through the website. You can see what workshops are available near you, as well as support groups and other things like that. But if we were doing the longer version of this workshop, we would talk through a few different case studies or examples. And the one I want to, sometimes we'll talk through like repetitive questions or behaviors, like is on the screen. There was another one on the screen before that was quote unquote aggression. I always say quote unquote because it's not that our person is aggressive. It's often more that our person is reacting to what they see. Maybe they feel threatened and they're not being aggressive. They're reacting to protect themselves, or they think they're in danger, or they think you're in danger, etc. So the one I'll highlight for us tonight There's a case study example where the person is in their home. It's kind of in the early evening. People are visiting and they're getting more and more suspicious and paranoid. And they're pointing at the window and seeing their own reflection in the window, and they're thinking it's someone outside. So, this is a scenario in which the person is misunderstanding what they are seeing, and also, they're already experiencing paranoia, maybe a little bit of delusions, maybe hallucination, maybe not. In this particular example, that's not what's described. But suddenly, like if we weren't paying attention and we were the group in the room, we would be wondering why our person is suddenly upset and shouting at us and saying, "You stole my purse," and telling us to go to hell and to leave. And we're thinking like, how did this happen? We were just right here and suddenly. But when we apply this 4-part tool with behavioral expressions to uncover what might be the trigger, then to address the physical, then the emotional, and then to take a moment and just like regroup what worked, what didn't. The last thing that I'll say, I said at the beginning, but I'm reminding myself that with lives, sometimes people come in throughout. And so I'm glad you're here. I am a volunteer from the Alzheimer'S Association. The Alzheimer'S Association is here for you. You can call day or night that helpline. That's 1-800-272-3900. You can go to the website, alz.org. You can find support that is local to you or local to your person if you live in different places. You can find information about getting an accurate diagnosis. You can find information about support groups, about support in your area with maybe transportation or adult day programs or care communities or communal settings, getting help in the home, etc. Um, Maybe you've kind of had it up to here and you just feel like you're struggling, you're not sure what to do next. You can call the association for yourself. Like, I need help as caregiver, I need some advice, I need some resources. The association is here for you. And I'm so glad. Thank you, Sarah and HALOHOME, for hosting us tonight. This was really fun. I know we will, and I don't say that disrespectfully, fun. I say it out of connection with you all. And so, Sarah, I know you're going to share some resources and then we'll go to the AMA. Excellent.
Is this better?
I can hear you just fine, Sarah. I don't know about anybody else.
Okay, I'm getting some reports from chat that chat can't hear me. All right, sounds like we're all good to go now. Got it fixed. So the next step really is simplify tasks, break everything down into the smallest pieces you can. If there's too many choices, too many complex instructions, they'll get overwhelmed, as Miss Brenda was talking about. And that's when you're really asking for, outbursts, for them to be overwhelmed with fear or frustration. It's much easier, for example, in the case of changing their clothes. At first, just hand them their shirt. Say, okay, first let's put on your shirt. Once they've gotten that taken care of, then either hand them the next piece, or if they need to sit for pants, say, okay, sit down, we'll take care of the pants, and one step at a time. That way they know what's coming with each movement that you're making. Ms. Brenda touched on this earlier as well. Build moments of calm into your day. And you don't even have to really block out, like some people will say, block out an hour every day to read. And I know for so many of you that's not possible. Nobody has an hour that they can set aside. What I like to say is look for 15 minutes. 15 minutes where you can go do the dishes quietly in the kitchen while your loved one, you know, watches a favorite show or listens to music that they enjoy. Anything that creates a break in stimulation so that your loved one doesn't get that overwhelmed and that emotional buildup. That's what leads to outbursts. Avoid rushing. I know it's so easy to get pulled into the trap of, you have somewhere to be in 30 minutes, you have to go, your loved one's getting distracted by their shoes, or they need to put their mascara on, or, even they're just having a slow day. The more frustrated you get with trying to get them to move faster, the more upset they're going to get, the more pressure they're going to feel, the more fear they're going to feel, and the more tension is going to build. So something that I found very, very helpful is anytime I know I need to be somewhere, give an hour instead of 30 minutes. So give yourself that extra 30 minutes before you go out the door. Validate, don't argue. Miss Brenda went into this very, very well. I like to say you're not acknowledging that you're acknowledging the emotion. You're not agreeing with the delusion. So just meet them where they are, and it's going to make your life so much easier. Adjustments to diet. Now, for me, this is one of the biggest things. I know dealing with my mother, her diet is an ongoing battle. I'm sure many of you feel the same. But what they eat has such a big impact, such an outsized impact on everything else about their health. Hydrate. Hydration is key. If they don't hydrate, it's going to make them more confused and irritable off the bat. Of course, it's a big contributor to the dreaded UTI, but also if they're diabetic, it's going to raise their blood sugar because their blood's going to become more concentrated. If they have high blood pressure, you're going to see similar impacts. They're going to be more likely to have a cardiac or stroke incident. If they don't like regular water, hydration drops. There's a company out there called Mio that makes liquid drops you can mix with their water. This is a fantastic way to boost it. It adds color, it adds flavor. If they're big soda fans, I very strongly recommend looking into the different like caffeine or carbonated waters that are out there. There is a few that are actually cola flavored that I've been told come across very similar to Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper. So if your loved one is that Coke or Pepsi fiend, that may be a good way to help them get some more hydration as well. Of course, limit the caffeine and the alcohol. It interferes with their sleep, increases anxiety. It can, again, increase risk for UTIs, bladder infections, and of course, it just ramps them up. If you're looking for a calm home, caffeine's not going to be your friend. I strongly recommend switching to decaf coffee and tea. And if they love that wine or that beer, it's very easy now to find non-alcoholic versions as well to still give them the taste. Stabilize that blood sugar. Big swings in blood sugar, we know, causes the moodiness. Again, that's going to feed the UTI risk. Something that has been very helpful in my experience is to have either 5 or 6 smaller meals or 3 small meals and then 2 or 3 larger snacks throughout the day. And that way, there's never any sudden highs or sudden lows with the blood sugar, and it keeps their energy very level. Offer familiar comfort foods. I think we have all of us at some point or other had that argument about, no, you don't need to eat that. The doctor said no. And, there's so many alternatives these days, whether it's a certain type of meat they can't have, whether it's butter, whether it's dairy, or, they can't have a lot of carbs. There are so many different options that taking that moment to find a way to make something that they like. For my mom, lasagna. She is a huge lasagna fiend. So something I like to do when I visit her is make 3 or 4 pans, and I'll use the protein noodles instead of the normal pasta noodles, and I'll make the various switches for low sugar sauce, etc. And then once I've made them all, I freeze them in small sections, and then she has a comfort food, a favorite food of hers, available at all times. And so days when she doesn't feel good, when I know she hasn't eaten anything, she's saying, I just don't have any energy, I can remind her, Mom, there's lasagna in your freezer, and every time, instant perk up. So, anything you can do to offer those familiar foods and offer some variety of what they're craving, that's going to go a long way in any given moment towards making your life more harmonious. Rule out UTIs. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but as someone who's worked in the senior living industry, I can tell you UTIs are the #1 contributor to sudden losses of ability. I've seen UTIs lead to seniors who have lost the use of legs. I've seen them lead to seniors who went from being able to walk perfectly fine to needing a walker for the remainder of the time that they were with us. So, if you ever suspect that there might be a UTI, you notice an unusual smell, you notice sudden behavior changes, you notice they're suddenly having to go to the restroom very, very frequently, definitely contact the doctor and rule out the UTI first thing. Now, adjustments to environment. This will drastically reduce the potential triggers for daily agitation. If you reduce clutter, a cluttered space, there's so many things to look at. It makes it more difficult to watch where they're going, but also it's more overwhelming, more confusing. Adjust the lighting. This is an incredibly simple thing that's so often overlooked. It's very common to think about night lights in the hallway, but it's less common to think about how lighting can impact sundowning. When you are operating at night, Try and keep the entire house dim, not dark. If you have a light that you can turn on over the kitchen sink while leaving the rest of the kitchen lights off, if you can leave a bathroom light on so that there's light through the whole hallway or living room, but try and make sure that there are no spaces that you anticipate your loved one traversing at night that are unlit. If they can't see well enough, they'll get more confused. They'll be more unsteady. They're more likely to experience a sundown regression, which is where they start becoming very agitated and start not exactly devolving in skills, but regressing in emotional capability at that moment. Minimize noise. Competing noises are a big one. I know for a lot of us, our loved one loves to keep that TV on full volume, and they'll still pick up the phone or try and have a phone call on their cell phone or turn the radio on. But the more competing noise there is, the more distressing it becomes, especially if you have guests. When you have a large group of guests, often it can be better to have them come into the area where your loved one is, one or two at a time. Something that I have heard from some families is if they have, for example, a family gathering, a barbecue, they'll have the outdoor section where most of the family, the children, the food is, and then a quieter section where it's cooler for their older loved ones who are more easily upset. And then the kids, the grandkids, the great grandkids kind of take turns visiting with them so they don't get overwhelmed. Check the temperature. I know Miss Brenda touched on this one again. It's so easy to overlook something that affects them. It may seem a perfect temperature to us. It may seem like there's no breeze to us. But something as simple as an air conditioning vent that's open too far in one direction going towards their chairs, that can make a big impact. And a lot of times they struggle to even recognize what has upset them, let alone to communicate. So anytime you have, agitation that you can't explain, always factor in what's going on in the environment at that time. Most importantly, and I know those of you who have been around for a minute hear me say this all the time, you have to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you don't take the time to carve out moments for you to catch your breath, even if it's just stepping outside for a few moments while your loved one is upset about something, if you know they're safe and you know there's nothing that can harm them where they are, there is nothing wrong with stepping away for a minute to catch your breath so that you are in a healthier place to help them. And that's pretty much everything that I have. I will bring Miss Brenda back and we will get into some of the questions we've gotten for the AMA.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
Right, so our first question, we have, let me fix that font. And now I made it too small.
Sarah, while you're fixing that, if you want to read it, I'm happy to. I think am I doing the AMA? Are you, or we're both?
I was going to let you answer since you're a
Okay,
bit more of the expert, but right
okay,
now my system is not being friends, so I'm just going to read those out.
great. Thank you.
So the first question that we have is from Nova Kitty. And they ask, what do you recommend to get your loved one to eat more? My dad gets frustrated if he bites his cheek or spills something and
Mm,
then just screams instead of eating, which leads to sugar drops, etc.
okay, excellent. Thank you, Nova Kitty. Um, a few different things to consider. If we were to take our behavioral expressions model and apply it here, then I also want to ask or encourage you to ask yourself, how often is this happening and what time of day is this happening? Is this every time I think you said your dad eats, or is this just in the evenings or just after he woke up from a nap? Like, what is the time of day or what are the trends that you're seeing? That will then help us to identify what would be most helpful to him. So if it is just after a nap or after he wakes up in the morning, then we might slow down and help him to ground and wake up and sort of become connected to this space before we try to encourage him to eat.
All right,
Some
so Nova Kitty has dropped in the chat that it's every meal.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. And I'll be happy. Yeah, great. Um, so for every meal, then I'm also curious if it's every, in Nova Kita, you don't have to answer at this point, but just to think about for yourself. Is it every time? You said every meal. Is it every bite? Is it just certain foods? Does your person have dentures? Is there some mouth care issue going on? There's all sorts of things we can be curious about here. If your person, depending on where they're at in their journey, if they're still regularly going to the dentist or the doctor, it may be good for you, especially if they're later in their journey and you are helping them with their daily personal care, or if there is a home care or other provider doing that, it might be good to take a look and to see how his mouth looks. Is there something that seems awry? Is there a wound? Is there a broken tooth? Is there something he's maybe overcompensating for? And so this may be a good opportunity for a doctor's visit, whether that's a dentist, depending on what you're seeing, or a traditional doctor, or I guess a more general doctor. It may be a possibility that a speech language pathologist might be a benefit at this point, and it may not be, but for everybody on the line, especially if your person has Medicare, whether it's traditional Medicare or some other health insurance, they may be eligible for physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, depending on what's going on for them. If there's a change in their living situation, if there's a change in their abilities after, say, an illness or an injury, or if there's a significant change in their ability. Now, if your person is receiving hospice services, that may be less of an option for you, but it's possible sometimes that it's still applicable. So I would be curious about other providers taking a look at him to see what's going on. Now, I don't think this will be helpful, but I want to share it for the rest of the group. Just in general, not your what you described, Nova Kitty, but in general, if our person is not eating well or not eating enough, or they sit down and then they're immediately up and off, or they seem to be eating less and now they're losing weight. There's kind of two ends of the spectrum that can be common in the dementia journey, and that's either not eating enough or eating too much. So, not eating enough, there are a ton of strategies we can do. Sometimes we're really try to orient to get our person to sit. Dad, sit here and eat. Dad, sit here, sit here, sit here. And like I become a parrot. But sometimes it's helpful to provide handheld foods or to provide smaller meals more often, or to provide a meal with a sauce or something that is stimulating to the, what's the word, taste buds. It's common as we age, not related to dementia, for our sense of taste to be diminished. So helping to activate and stimulate your person in eating can be helpful. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we'll sometimes have a scenario where your person may be just eating constantly. And that might be more related to short term memory or seeking something. There's one dementia in particular that sometimes there's an oral fixation, and it's less about the food and more about that feeling. And so you may find if your person is just eating constantly, is there something else you can do to give them that sense if there's a concern about weight gain or diabetes or something that is applicable? So there's a number of things we could do. I hope that was helpful.
And I just wanted to add as well for Nova Kitty before we change to the next question. Now, you mentioned that he spills things frequently. I don't know if you've looked into the no spill cups and plates and bowls. Uh, they do make suction dishware that's made of silicone that when you set it down on the flat table in front of them, it can't slide or move unless you pull a specific tab to release the suction. I know a lot of seniors who have shaky hands or are post strokes have found that very helpful. As well, if appetite is an issue, where it seems like they can't identify food on the plate, a turquoise plate can help because they can see it easier. Now, if getting them to finish what's on their plate is the issue, if you're struggling with appetite, uh, going with a red plate has been shown to increase appetite and make it easier for them to see as they eat things off the plate and encourage them to eat more. So that may be something that can help as well. Now, the next question that we have is from BTWLRCCC, uh, who says, how did you all approach the discussion with your loved one? I think my mom may be developing it, but I don't know how to approach her.
Excellent. I'll dive in, Sarah.
Mhm.
Excellent. So forgive me, I've already forgotten the initials BT something. Um, so a few strategies here, and I'd like to make a plug for the Alzheimer's Association has a great workshop called Dementia Conversations and another workshop that's called the 10 Warning Signs. So if anybody joined and didn't hear before, you can go to the alz.org site and you can see those webinars at any time pre-recorded, or you could attend a webinar or an in-person workshop to see those. The reason I mention those two DTW is if we are seeing concerns in our person, it is first helpful to understand what things might be connected to dementia, and some of those might be surprising to us. And so that was some of what I shared at the beginning of this live around like visual perception, impulse control, decision making, filter, etc. Um, Now, the other thing that you might consider is the Dementia Conversations workshop, and that is all about how do I have the conversation with my person? Whether it's, hey, I'm seeing some concerns, let's go to the doctor, or hey, I am concerned about safe driving, or hey, we should get our power of attorney documents in order, kind of those big conversations. And a good strategy, and I'll just speak in general terms, is that often it is not effective for us to say to our person, oh my gosh, I see all these concerns. You know, you're forgetting things constantly. And look at the car, like that directive, you're a problem, we need to get you fixed or we need to get you to the doctor. Often that is not motivating. There's something called anosognosia that is common in many of the dementias. And what that means is I do not recognize the inabilities in myself. So you saying, we got to get there, you've got a problem, it's just going to push me away because I don't believe I have a problem. I think you have a problem. Um, you may find, especially if your person has Medicare as their health insurance, you may find that it's helpful to say, hey, it's that time of year. Let's get you scheduled for your medical or Medicare wellness exam. And hey, why don't I go with you? And we'll go to lunch afterwards. Um, or, hey, I'm scheduling my appointments. I'm trying to be accountable and take better care of my health. Why don't you come with me and I'll go with you? So we help it to be more palatable for our person. The last thing I'll share here around getting to the doctor, and I'm sort of presuming in this question that there's not a dementia diagnosis, but you're seeing some concerns. The last thing I'll share is that it may be helpful to have a strategy before you go into the appointment. I mentioned anosognosia before. Sometimes your person goes to the doctor and the doctor goes, hey, how you doing? And they go, oh my gosh, never been better. And you're like, no, that is not what I experience. So sometimes it's helpful to have a plan. If you are on your person's medical record that the provider can communicate with you, or if you have power of attorney for medical, if there's some like approval for you to be communicating with them, you can send a message to the medical provider portal. You can call ahead of time and say, hey, these are the concerns I'm seeing. Please address this in the visit. And also, sometimes an individual who comes to a doctor's appointment or goes to visit their friend or out of town relative comes in and suddenly they're like perky and able, and you're saying, this is not how they are with me. Sometimes our person can kind of pull it together. So it's helpful to invite them to see a provider in a way that is palatable to them. So whether that's the annual visit or you're getting checked out or hey, I noticed, did you notice I'm seeing that thing? Let's just go get it checked out together. And then also having a plan during the appointment and before the appointment.
All right. I don't think I've really got anything much to add on that one. Miss Brenda covered it pretty well. And let's see, our next question from Vic MacArthur. How do you handle doctor avoidance, as in a loved one who refuses to go to the doctor when they know they need to go?
Excellent. So Vic, I'll echo some of what I just shared, and I know the question was there before, and so this hopefully that was helpful to you. Um, a doctor avoidance, I'm curious in this case. I'm curious if this is something your person has always experienced. I'm also curious if your person maybe is seeing some change in themselves and is not wanting to acknowledge it, or if there's some anosognosia going on. Um, what was, Sarah, can you read that last part again? The doctor avoidance and then something. Oh,
As in
they
a
know they
loved.
need to go.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. When they know they need to go. So, Vic, I'm curious about that. Your person may know they need to go or they may not. And so I'm pouncing on this as an example. Sometimes I will hear from a family or family of choice, oh, my person's just not trying hard enough, or they're just being obstinate. When we talk about dementias being a whole brain disease, it's affecting decision making, impulse control, awareness of oneself, proprioception, like how I see where I begin and end. All of that can be impacted. And so it could be that your person just doesn't see it in themselves or doesn't want to bother with it, or maybe they have some discomfort or some emotional uncertainty, and they don't want to leave the house to go to the doctor. I know I don't want to leave the house to go to the doctor. And so there may be a lot of things going on, but you may find, like I shared a moment ago, that finding some hook that is palatable to your person, and it is usually not, I see a problem, we need to get you checked out. That's usually not the approach that is motivating to our person. It needs to be something softer, usually, not always. Um, I think that's all I have, Sarah.
I do actually have something to add with that one, just from personal experience. Sometimes, if they're not wanting to go to the doctor, and you're kind of asking them what has them nervous, and a lot of times you're gonna have to obliquely approach it like a crab scuttle from the side. Uh, but asking them questions about why they may not want to go can yield everything from it's too hot or cold outside, or they may be feeling nauseous and don't want to get in the car. I've heard of that being a reason they didn't want to go out for whatever purpose. Uh, but as you go through and you kind of try and find out the core reason, you may be able to find a workaround. Something that you can look into, there's a growing number of concierge geriatric care specialists. And these are people who specialize in senior care, uh, for seniors who struggle to get out of the house to go to doctor's appointments. A lot of times, if you speak with your local area association on aging, or your local social work organization, or your home health or hospice care, they may have other suggestions and solutions if you really come to the point that you just can't get them out of the house for a doctor's appointment. And looks like we've got one more question from Narcissus. Says, my mom likes to garden, but it leads to her wanting to go outside even at night, which can lead to her wandering off. Is there a good way to keep her safe outside beyond keeping an eye on her?
One question, Narcissus. Um, so something that can be common in the dementia journey is the impact to circadian rhythms. So having my sleep schedule mixed up, maybe even flipping my day and night. This can be super common. So there are a few things you can do. I'm going to sort of talk up to your example to talk through some of the proactive efforts first. So, if you recall, if you were with us at the time when I was sharing the slides from the Alzheimer's Association and that example of the case study of the woman who's in the home and she's seeing the reflection, um, sundowning is very common for individuals on a dementia journey, and there are a number of strategies to handle that. I think the most effective are proactive, so ensuring that our person has meaningful engagement and movement throughout the day. Not to be overly tired or overly booked, but to do things, kind of get that energy out in a way that's meaningful. A good best practice is to get our person out every afternoon, to be out in the fresh air, in the sunlight, in the elements, not to have them experience something that is negative, but just to help ground them to the seasons and the change of day. That can also help with sleeping at night, often in the dementia journey because of what's going on with dementia and other comorbidities. Sleep can often be impacted. So, getting out every day in the sunshine and the elements to connect to that, that could be just a few minutes and can have a big impact. And then as we're approaching if our person sundowns, then when they sundown. As we're approaching that, we're also thinking through the behavioral expressions, that four-part tool. So does it happen all the time? Are there times when it doesn't happen? Is it worse sometimes? Is it better sometimes? Trying to figure out what might be spiking it or triggering the sundowning or that increased confusion, etc., or that disconnection or mix up of day and night. It is helpful if your person sundowns before we get to the evening to have the lights on, to close the curtains before it gets dark, to try to bump up the visibility and the comprehension of the space. And the more cognitively challenging, the more active things, generally we do earlier in the day, and then generally calmer things in the evening. So I'm curious, even before answering your question properly, Narcissus, is if you tackle all of these things, will it also help to orient your person? I think you said your mom. Will it also help to orient her better to day and night? It is common in the dementia journey, even if my person has their day and night flipped, and I try to show them, no, it's night, it's 2 a.m., it's not 2 in the afternoon. My person may not be swayed by that, may not see that, may not accept that. And so your best bet might be to sort of front load the earlier part of the day and help her to participate successfully in the garden, which she loves, which is amazing. And then by the time we get to the evening, develop a routine that's more calming. I want to emphasize something that Sarah said before that I think I misunderstood when you first said it, Sarah. So I just want to clarify for the group. In general, even not associated with dementia, as we age, we need more light to properly see. And so when it's in the evening, in general, I want good light, not overstimulating light, but good, clear light. And it's your person probably needs a little bit more than you do, especially if you're younger than them. And so when Sarah was talking about like a light in the kitchen sort of thing, that is, and you tell me if you had a different intention, Sarah, but this is research I have read. That's more when you don't want all the lights off at night, so when your person is asleep, you still want some wayfinding, pathfinding lights available.
Correct, yes.
Good, thank you, Sarah. Um, so those are some strategies, Narcissus. The last thing I'll say is when you said about wandering off. So the possibility for someone unsafely leaving their place is common in the various dementias. So the term that's often used is wandering. But often it's a case where it's not, it's sometimes it's wandering, sometimes our person is seeking something. Sometimes they're trying to quote unquote go home. Sometimes they're looking for something. Sometimes they're drawn to something. So, wandering, quote unquote, is common in many of the dementias. It is good to be proactive for everyone on the line about that. If it's something that you know that your person is prone to, you want to have a good plan. And you can call the Alzheimer's Association for some strategies. There's the Safe Return program. There's some other programs that would be helpful. If your person is at a stage in their journey where they still have their cell phone, you could, with their approval, with their blessing, you could set up like a Find My sort of app, or with their approval, there are tracking devices. But we do not do that without our person's approval. Even though our person is on this journey, they still have agency and independence to choose and say, no, I don't want that thing. But to be proactive and have a backup plan, and to be thinking about when she does, if I'm reading your question correctly, this might be something you are concerned about, maybe it's happened before, then definitely apply that four-part assessment tool to try to figure out, gosh, I think you said mom, when my mom wanders, it's in these scenarios. So now I need to get ahead of those. And definitely do reach out to the Alzheimer's Association and they can talk you through more specifics for your person and what might be going on. Thank you, Max. Sarah, are you still talking? I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I did not hit the button to unmute myself.
Okay.
As I was saying, unless anybody else in chat has a last question to wiggle in, looks like we are wrapping up. I do want to say thank you so much to Ms. Brenda and to the Alzheimer's Association for joining us tonight and for becoming part of our community.
On behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, I'm a volunteer, as I've shared with the group, but the association is here for you. They have a helpline. They're there 24/7. The site has a ton of resources. Do reach out for help. And thank you for having us, Sarah.
Thank you again, Rosemary. Thank you for everybody who joined us tonight. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I hope everyone has a peaceful evening. And remember, you cannot pour